Welcome back, everyone. I am your co-host, Christy, and you are at the Project Celebrating Singles podcast. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, Mateo. Welcome, Mateo. We're so happy you're here with us.
Thanks for having me on, Christy. It's such a joy and a pleasure to be with you and to have this conversation on what it means to be single in the modern age and the joy that comes from that. So it's a double win.
Let's go. I know. I'm so excited to catch up with you. So, okay, we are going to have a little bit of a brag party because this is celebrating singles. And I know that might be hard for you, but I need you to just celebrate some of the stuff that you've been able to do because you've been single. I know you've been all over the world on some really interesting projects and work. And this is just another one of those more interesting projects. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to.
So my career has been marked by people. I graduated with engineering, but the last couple of quarters was touched by the world of design thinking. And as some of you may know, design thinking is a user-centered process, i.e., we have to focus on the people that we're designing for. And so that has spanned the joy of my 10 years of working, and started off actually by being available on a bus ride to campus and being asked, hey, would you like to teach design thinking to a bunch of high schoolers in Palestine? And after saying yes to that, that kind of set off the trajectory that, yes, led me around the world, led me many times to teach those same high schoolers and eventually college students in Palestine, but has led me to places that I just never would have dreamed of going, and reaching people that I would have never otherwise been able to reach. I mean, just shout out to the people of Gaza and the students that I've been able to teach there. We're holding you in a beautiful space as we, await for peace in that region.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. Well, okay. And just so you'll be humble about this, but all of this started at Stanford University during your time there, right? So I just have to call that out. Pretty cool that you got to spend some time there.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of overlooked that here and there, but it is a great source of pride in that they really formed this sense of community, living in dorms, going to study groups that the entire campus, big as it was, felt like a home that you could get from point A to point B within 5 minutes. And your friends, even though you lived in the same freshman dorm, you could see anytime at any space because we all lived on campus all 4 years. And that sense of community still persisted even after graduating. And now I'm getting to live that same semblance of community in a house of 12 guys.
Wow. Okay. Well, we are going to get to that in a little bit, which I'm super pumped to learn more about. You've had such an interesting journey. I love it already so far. So, okay, my first question for you, Mateo, as we were kind of chatting and preparing for this time, I think you've got to first start out on just how you talk about being intentional while being single and the importance of intentionality while being single. So I want to start there because I think this is so powerful and something that is going to be so intriguing for a lot of people. So talk to us more about what do you mean by being intentional while being single?
Well, it's no surprise to know that I'm single. But it is a surprise to know that before being single, I was actually never starting my late teen years up until a couple of years ago, I was always in the dating space. Whether or not I was dating or in a relationship, my mindset, my heart set, as I like to say, was one of dating, one of connecting. I'm a people person. And early on, the culture told me that to be the person I meant to be was to be in a relationship. And so that mindset and heart set persisted for the better part of my adult life until I entered and exited a relationship that really got me thinking about something my sister told me, one of those interims in between dating during that dating lifestyle. She so beautifully and poignantly asked me, Mateo, have you actually ever been single? And my response was, of course I have. I'm single right now. Like, I'm not dating anyone. How, like, what kind of a question is that? But her point uh, went further beyond that status. It went and penetrated my heart. It got me thinking after taking that time away from my most recent relationship to say, I don't think I've ever been single, and maybe I
Wow.
ought to do this for myself, to explore what it means for this single Mateo in the world, what it means to be Matthew outside of a relationship, outside of that mindset and heart set. And so for the past 2 years, and intentionally so, and I'll speak about that in a little bit, in the past year, I have been absent dating. My momentum, my perspective, the way that uh, my default has been, no, I'm not looking for a relationship. And that has
Dang, that's
uh,
interesting.
been met with such resistance,
Mm,
not to the society that I thought I heard constant messages of, your worth is in your relationship, but resistance from within. That these mindsets and heart sets that have been so set to default and had almost calcified in the way that I approached people. Um,
wow.
that was a sense that ability to be single was a wake up call, but a difficult one. And so the first
I
year or
can
so
relate.
that I was
Yeah.
single, I told myself I really need to take this seriously. And so when the opportunity to make a promise came to mind, came to my person, I said, I don't know if I'm ready for that. But within a week, I decided, yes, this is for me. This is what I need for further growth. And so the past year, there have been so many beautiful experiences and lessons of what it means to not just be single Mateo, but single in general, what it means to be in a romantic relationship. And looking back, I can now, say, huh, like this is why it didn't work.
Right.
And so looking forward at the potential of marriage, at the potential of a romantic relationship, I can now go into it saying, this is how single Mateo ought to be in a relationship.
Wow, that's pretty wild that you've been, you know, single for intentionally single now for 2 years or something now. You've been on this journey.
1 year of intentional singlehood, two
Okay.
years of being single, but we'll stick with the 1 year of intentional singlehood.
I just think I love even that like phrase of like intentional singlehood. I think so many of our audience can relate to, I call it always having kind of like one eye open, one eye over here. Like I would be single, but I would constantly be like looking or open to a relationship, which I also had this like realization that, oh, shoot, this is actually pretty unhealthy. And not only am I unhealthy, but I am like opening myself up to pretty unhealthy people as well, which is why the relationships were not working. So I just love intentional singlehood. I think that's pretty powerful. And honestly, anyone who's like listening to our podcast, everyone who's taking our online course, that is what we want to champion, is really going after kind of the internal heart work, so that we can be intentional. And most people, I would say, most of our community members are not necessarily looking to stay single forever. I think the vast majority, like, ultimately desire partnership or marriage. But being intentional in singleness, I think, is so key, and honestly, what we're after in this mission, to
Mm-hmm.
change the way the world experiences singleness. So cool to
Mm-hmm.
hear.
Let me quickly, just for viewers who are like, what is intentional singlehood? First of all, there is a time frame that I gave myself, that I'm giving myself. And I spoke in both the past and the present because it ended, but I'm still I'm extending it. Um, and what it is a desire for me to live, cultivate pure and truer love, and a sense of a reality of pleasing others as they ought to be pleased, in their fullest dignity as people, without being people pleasing.
Ooh,
And
that's
so,
good. Okay, I'm intrigued. This is good. Tell me more.
uh, well, the desire for singlehood was, again, like I mentioned, to in a way, separate myself from the Mateo that is known with others, to set myself in a light that I'm able to both see who Mateo is, but also who and what romance is. And so in the past year, I have received so many different insights into the reality of relationship, for me at least, that one, I don't need to be with someone in order to be whole. That this life
Wow.
partner, or this idea of, people complementing each other is, true. I want to give a shout out to marriage and all the healthy and beautiful marriages out there. Yet, what I've come to realize is it makes two to be a whole, and they ought to be two, that they ought to be single in their marriage, that they ought
Wow.
to have, as I found in my singlehood, me time, that they ought to have beautiful and whole friends and communities that support their deepest dreams and that are able to be intimate with them on a non romantic level. And the reason I've
So
realized all
good.
this is because at the end of the day, for me at least, in how I see it, I'm going to end up single. A marriage will, at some point end. I'll die or they die.
Mm,
And, singleness will ensue, I presume. So if I'm not able to be single healthily and wholly now, that's going to be a problem down the line. And I want to make sure that I set my future self up beyond, my future self in a relationship, if that's, how I decide to pursue my life. I want to make sure that I set that future Mateo up for success. And that's the deepest sense of love that I could give myself.
yeah, so good. Well, and your future partner, right? So that's definitely something that we talk about in the online course, as well as in these different conversations. Really, like being intentional and understanding yourself, even understanding. We're just recently reading about research that showed how important play is in relationships, either friendships, family relationships, or romantic relationships. And in a romantic relationship, you actually don't have to play the same in order to still have like a healthy marriage, which I actually found really interesting. I thought, okay, to have a healthy marriage, you should like spend as much time together as possible. But what they actually found is you actually just both need like fun playtime, whether that's reading a book or hiking a mountain or surfing or whatever that is. And then you actually are healthier when you are spending time together. And so I thought that was really fascinating and definitely speaks towards like if you're healthy as a single, you will continue to have health in your marriage and you're only going to benefit everyone around you, whether that's friendships, family, and or your future spouse. So I love that. That's really, really good. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, so let's get into that a little bit more. Like what has that looked like for you? I know you're really big on community. You mentioned you're living in a guy's house, like post college, which is kind of unique and different, but I love it. I'm here for it. I'm excited to hear more. So tell us more. What does that practically look like for you? Or what have you been learning?
I've been learning that quality beats quantity. And so much of my
Mm,
desire in
dang.
relationship or for a relationship is the sense of quantity, of being accompanied. And accompaniment is beautiful, but the need for it, I think, is part of the problem that I've come to realize has
Mm,
played a role in previous and somewhat unhealthy relationships that I've been in, and I don't want that for me or any future partner. So what I've learned and heard many a different people who are married attest to is that it's not the quantity, it's the quality. And so here in community, living with 12 guys in a house that I like to say is a frat without the frattiness, um,
wait, 12
we
guys.
have
You live with 12 guys.
12. I know the 12
Whoa.
dwarves, it's not dysfunctional. We keep our kitchen and our bathrooms very clean, despite what others might think. We keep ourselves well. And it's a beautiful space to exist in healthy masculinity and to promote what
Okay.
I like to call nutric masculinity. And
Okay. Tell me
this
more.
is
Hold
this
on.
is some of
Double click
those
on that.
lessons that, being away from that space of dating, I've been able to focus on what it means to be a man with other men. which is so necessary in today's society, that we form those bonds of brotherhood, that we need and ought to cherish one another in ways that are emotionally, psychologically vulnerable, because that's truly how we become the men we're supposed to be. I
Wow.
have experienced such love by these men who have shared their hearts to me in community, interpersonally, that they've gone above and beyond to, give me rides when I need to the airport and back, that have been able to affirm me when I'm in my deepest and darkest moments in life. When searching for that job that I so desired to have this past summer, they were really there to just share how everything is gift, and just these beautiful perspectives that I would never have been able to experience on my own, or if I just focused perhaps on just one uh, solitary relationship. These men have shown me what it's like to, a word I like to say, masculate one another, where we don't need to compete for power and control and dominance over others and other things, which is the traditional voice of society that
Sure.
tells us this is how you ought to be a man, by taking control, by taking the power, but rather to be solid in our manhood, in our brotherhood, not needing to prove that, but in that space, that solid foundation, then being able to give of that identity, give of that masculinity to others. Hence the word
So,
masculating.
so
And it's a
good.
gift that I've been able to both share, give, receive, just in living with these other brothers, and something that I encourage others who are living singlehood to find that community, whether living in house or apart from each other physically. There is this gift that comes from finding these, not just individual Samwise, if for those token fans, Lord of the Rings, but those supportive partners, but a
Mm.
community of these supportive partners who will journey with you into the deeper, scarier, unknown parts of who you are, which I've definitely gone through and back a number of times.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my gosh. Well, this is so intriguing. I think this is so interesting. There is a common denominator. I've been doing a lot of these interviews, and there is a common denominator with the people who have been really healthy in singleness, that they have found a shared space where they live in community. It's not just that they're doing community like a sports league, right, which is great, or volunteering together. Those are all great things, and definitely other things we recommend and we talk through in the online course. But I think it's so fascinating. Like, you're living with these people and clearly going deeper in your conversations, deeper in emotional capacity, deeper in, all sorts of things. It sounds like you're going after, which is really interesting. Can you share maybe some
Mhm.
practicals? Because I think for most men, that might be new, kind of like going to deeper places emotionally or opening up that emotional capacity. Do you have, like, I would say tips, tricks? Like, are most of you like in a regular therapy routine? Like, I'm just kind of curious, what are some practicals of what that looks like?
So, some suggested facets or activities that we were given upon moving in was find yourself a therapist, find yourself a support network outside of this house, because it's not easy living in community. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
it is refining. It is, the saying, iron sharpens iron. Like, there is a lot of that, and there have been some heated discussions. There have been some, broken friendships, but the brotherhood keeps us together. And in that brokenness, which we all carry into these relationships, we're able to also, heal each other. We're also able to, from an outsider's perspective, say, hey, this is what I see going on. Can you speak to this? And so some practicals are curiosity first. We're all operating out of some, misguided perspective. I mean, I admitted at the beginning of this podcast, like, my heart set and mindset was dating is the norm, and being in relationship was who I am. And that is a flawed, place to come from, uh, place to operate from. And so recognizing that, I may be wrong, but where can we both acknowledge and find the greater kernels of truth that can advance the situation and bring us into greater unity. So curiosity, I would say. Another is don't be afraid to ask those and practice those I feel sentences, because our feelings are valid. Our feelings don't need to dominate and don't need to control how we behave and ought not to, but they do inform the situation. They do inform the context, and they help give language and understanding as to, well, what is actually going on beneath the surface.
Mm.
I would also say on that line, don't be afraid to cry in front of one another. Make that a brave space. Make that a welcoming activity or option for men if they need to, because it can be overwhelming life. But when we come home and this is where we live, we need to be able to feel able to let our complete let ourselves open, let the armor that we might carry throughout the day relinquish that. And so that
Good.
is a little scary at times to say, what will they think of me? But the fact that we're all committed to, and perhaps that's another tip or strategy, is renew that commitment to brotherhood, to community every day, because it is a challenge. When we commit to that, we are all in it for each other's growth and betterment.
So
Um,
good.
mhm.
So good. In fact, I love what you're sharing. And so, one of the classes in the online course, we talk about this tool of replacing lies with truth. And this tool has been, I would say, the tool I've used dozens and dozens of people all over the world. I've given away this tool just in different life coaching scenarios. And what's super interesting, though, is this tool actually works the best when you have people close around you that are willing to call you out. And I've just found living in community is the best way to do that. But it's not super fun all the time. It can definitely enter into some challenging territory. But what's super interesting when I work with different clients and they're like, this is just too much for me. Like, I'm going to go get an apartment by myself, like, and I'll do this work in therapy. But what I find is it actually stints their growth because you just naturally are going to have more stuff come up when you're living in close proximity. And if you don't do that when you're single, then what happens is it all comes out in marriage with your spouse and with your kids. And I'm like, I, for one, am ready to get all this out now. Like, I don't want to wait until I get married and have kids for those triggers or for those, whatever broken lenses I'm operating under. Like, I'd rather do that work now before I enter into like literally a lifelong commitment, or, I start interacting with children, my children, and parenting them. And then hopefully, I'm giving them therapy content in the future. Like, no, hopefully the goal would not be to do that. And so I really want to challenge those who are listening, who, are hearing your story and are like, man, that sounds awesome, but like, I could never do that. I promise you, I've coached so many different people who have just decided to go for it. And if you stick with it, it is so, so beneficial. And honestly, produces accelerated growth. And so at this point, most people listening to this, they don't want to stay single a day longer than they need to. And so it's like, hey, like, let's be intentional and let's go after the acceleration of growth. And living in community, I definitely, from all of these interviews that we've done, and just my anecdotal experience as well, living in community is a great way to accelerate that growth.
One of the most beautiful aspects of living in community has been encouragement, has been those moments where we get together as a whole house for what I like to say is date night. We're about to, in 30 minutes, enjoy our weekly meal together, which we say we commit to, we uphold this 2.5 hours of a meal and an activity every week.
So
And we
good.
don't let anything get in the way, which is great practice, by the way, for marriage date night, where you
Right.
renew that relationship, those commitments that you
So good.
make as a married person. And if you're unable to commit to brothers and friends, well, at least for me, I realized I had some work to do, making those commitments in my previous relationships. The
So
final thing
good.
that I would, say as a tip, perhaps, or as a strategy for living in community is find those activities that you all can do outside of the house.
Mm,
Preferably activities that serve others or that help others, because we might not be in agreement, for a given week. But we don't have to be in agreement to say, there's a burning building down the street, we should go put it out. Analogous, of course, to what we might do, helping elderly people, take care of their house, or helping widows who, decide that they need some home improvement or plumbing redone. We've done that a
Oh,
couple of times.
that's so
And
cool. Man, the people in
and
LA are blessed by your house. That's cool.
it we try. We're not perfect, but we just hope that we set the stage for others to crop up. And there are
Sure.
some across the state that operate as intentional communities, and so we just hope more. And we can
Well,
talk
yeah.
more about why. But
Well, in this community, I am so excited. I mean, people are already talking about it, already starting it. We've been doing this in a smaller way, in a different way. We've been doing retreats here in Hawaii. So that's part of what we've been piloting. Is it's just a usually about 9 days. Some of them have been 2 weeks, where we'll do intentional community together. We'll just get a large Airbnb. And so that's, if you're like brand new and you're like, this whole living community thing is, I'm not sure about it, just do like especially for digital nomads or people who can work remote, just book an Airbnb with a group of people. We usually keep it to like 10 to 15 people. We've done co-ed, we've done all girl, but it's been so cool. And honestly, we're all like, okay, we're game. Like this could work. This could happen. So that's one idea, another idea for people to consider. Last question. I'm curious if you could just maybe in a succinct way say, in the last year of intentional singlehood, what have you taken away from this last year?
um, I will speak generally, but give a specific answer of a takeaway. One, I have been able to see more clearly. My perspective is even more of the peacemaker, of the academic that I see myself as being. I now see myself as who I'm meant to be, way more picture clear and purely than I've ever seen myself before. And really, what that allows for is trueness and pure relationships as they ought to exist outside of a relationship, outside of that relationship mentality. And I have received so many blessings, hashtag blessed, of uh, men and women who have said, Mateo, thanks so much for talking to me on the phone for, the past hour or so. I have received so much wholeness and healing from just being received by a brother that I never knew that I needed. And that ability
Oh,
and that reception of that brotherhood from more than just the 12 that I live with is fact and proof that taking this year of intentional singlehood is so worth it, that others benefit for them. And I get to live a life that is pleasing to others without being people pleasing.
so good. I'm so encouraged, and I know so many others are going to be encouraged from this interview as well. Mateo, thank you. And thanks for your yes just to this journey. I love it because now it's interesting, right? That this project has come after you've been learning all this good stuff for the last year. And honestly, has been our heart as, this group of friends set out on this. Everyone was honestly constantly kind of complaining and grumbling about just singleness and the dating scene and culture and all this stuff. I'm like, well, who's doing something about this, right? Like, let's go after this. I'm like, we can't be the only ones that are like, unsatisfied. And I thought, we just thought so succinctly, well, wait a minute, what if we just cultivate the people who have done it well or have been doing it well, share all the insights and goodness, and then take people through this like journey, and then let's date from that pool. Like, I want to date from that pool. I want to date from the pool of people who have been intentional, and who've been going after this in a healthy way. So yeah, I just think it's so encouraging to hear your story, and I know so many are going to benefit from your insights. And I'm excited to see what happens as our community grabs a hold of just everything that you're walking in. So thanks so much for this time. For Project Celebrating Singles, we're going to be dropping these podcasts every Tuesday, but you can hit us up on Instagram at Celebrating Singles, or you can visit our website at celebratingsingles.com. This free podcast is really just a culmination of people that we want to celebrate, of amazing people who also happen to be single. But we also have a very affordable online course that you can take. It includes classes, some activations. Actually, Mateo right here is the genius behind these activation exercises, personal reflection time, different things to take the course content and really bring it to life in your everyday life, and really offer some incremental changes that are going to expedite your growth. And so we're really excited to continue on this journey with all of you. And thanks for checking in today. Thanks, Mateo.
Thank you for having me, Christy. It was such an honor, a joy, and I hope that we can continue to celebrate singlehood, because it's not easy, but it's so beautiful. So I encourage everyone out there to take that bold step.
Agree. Absolutely. Well, it was so fun to celebrate you today, Mateo. Thanks so much. All right, everyone. See you next week.